Welcome to From Dusk Till Yawn, your resting place for gentle facts, soft histories, and soothing stories that ease you towards sleep. Tonight, we drift into the delicate charm of the Regency Era, a time suspended between candlelight and reform, where quiet rituals and grand ideals wove through everyday life. Over the next hour, let your breath slow as we explore the world of 1811 to 1820. You'll hear tender details about how people lived, what they wore, how they loved, and how they held fast to etiquette in a world on the edge of change. If these peaceful travels calm your thoughts and bring you rest, we kindly invite you to subscribe to From Dusk Till Yawn, so you can return again whenever you'd like to wander into the past. Now, settle under your covers, breathe deeply, and join us on a journey. A day begins in the Regency Era. Imagine the first light of day slipping quietly through tall sash windows, touching pale wallpaper and the delicate lace curtains fluttering softly in a gentle morning breeze. Outside, birds begin their chorus, finches, robins, and nightingales singing their early songs. Inside, the house stirs with a hush of movement. The fire in the grand hearth, left burning low through the night, crackles softly as a servant stokes it back to life. The scent of burning wood blends with a faint trace of lavender from a sachet tucked in the linen cupboard. The morning begins not with harsh noise, but with a tender rhythm. Footsteps on polished floors, the soft rustle of silk, the distant clink of porcelain as breakfast is prepared. In a gentleman's study, a fire warms the room, and on a small table rests the morning paper, folded carefully overnight, still crisp with the scent of ink. The gentleman himself, dressed in a simple morning coat and waistcoat, pours a cup of tea, the steam rising slowly into the cool air. He lifts the cup to his lips, savouring the warmth, and begins to read. News from Parliament, reports from the continent, announcements of the latest social events. Elsewhere, the lady of the house begins her toilette. The faint sound of combs through hair, the patter of tiny slippers on the floor. She sits before a mirror framed in gilded wood, her reflection soft and serene. Hands skilled with brush and powder, ribbons carefully chosen to match the muslin of her day dress. Each fold and pleat arranged with care, a delicate art practiced with patience. The household wakes gradually. The kitchen fills with the aroma of freshly baked bread and boiling water for tea. The cook and her assistants move with quiet purpose, kneading dough, brewing coffee, lighting the stove. The butler oversees preparations, checking that silverware gleams. The dining room is set just so. Outside, the garden awakens too. Dew clings to the petals of roses and lilacs. The gardener moves along gravel paths, pruning, watering, tending the beds. The rustle of leaves mingles with the morning songbirds. As the day unfolds, routines follow gentle patterns. Morning letters arrive, carried by a postman who rings the bell with a soft chime. The lady receives her correspondence, breaking the wax seal with a careful flick of a finger. Inside, sweet scents of rose and lavender hint at the sender's tenderness or regard. In townhouses and country estates, mornings might include visits from acquaintances, calls arranged in advance, but always filled with warmth and decorum. Guests enter the drawing room with a low bow or curtsy. Conversations begin with pleasantries, weather, health, and the latest fashions. Afternoons bring promenades, an essential part of the social fabric. Gentlemen and ladies walk side by side beneath the dappled shade of elm trees, or along the smooth gravel paths of a manicured park. The air is fragrant with the scent of freshly mown grass and blooming flowers. Parasols tilt to shield from the sun. Gloves cover delicate hands, and eyes meet with cautious curiosity. At the promenade, social rules guide every movement. The placement of a hand, the turn of a head, the slightest smile, all carry messages understood by those who know. It is a dance of gestures as intricate as any ballroom waltz. Later, the tea table is set, a quiet ceremony of cups, saucers, and silver spoons. Conversation softens. Sweetmeats and cakes tempt the palate. The clink of porcelain, the gentle murmur of voices. The world slows to a tender pace. As the day draws to a close, candlelight flickers in the windows. The last hues of twilight fade from the sky, leaving a velvet darkness studded with stars. The household gathers in sitting rooms and libraries, where pianofortes play melodies that soothe and enchant. Fires crackle and glow. Books are opened, letters read by lamplight, and gentle laughter drifts through the air. The day ends as it began, softly, gently, with the world hushed beneath the night's embrace. And as you listen, may your own thoughts quiet, your breath deepen, and sleep gently come to carry you away. The shape of society. Let us now step deeper into the world of Regency society, a world where every glance, every greeting, and every gesture was carefully crafted. A world built on delicate layers of rank, duty, and quiet understanding. Imagine, if you will, a great ballroom, its walls lined with mirrors reflecting soft candlelight, its floors polished until they gleam like glass. Around you, men in dark tailcoats stand tall, their cravats tied just so. Ladies move gracefully in flowing gowns of muslin and silk, their bonnets pinned with care, their eyes sparkling with intelligence and restraint. This scene, though filled with laughter and music, is governed by invisible threads of hierarchy and etiquette that hold the entire fabric together. At the summit of this social mountain stand the nobility, dukes, earls, viscounts, men and women born into privilege and power. Their names are whispered in the halls of Parliament and inscribed on the ledgers of vast estates that stretch for miles. Their lives are entwined with tradition, duty, and the weight of expectation. Just beneath them are the landed gentry, those who own smaller estates or grand townhouses. Men of education, often lawyers, clergy, or gentlemen farmers. Their status is secure, but they live with an awareness of their place just a step below titled aristocracy. And beneath them still are the merchants, tradesmen, and artisans, the hands that craft the goods, run the shops, and power the bustling economy of London and the country towns. Their lives are often hard, their days long, yet many aspire quietly to move upward through industry or marriage. Yet, the rigid lines of class seem both solid and delicate, like a glass sculpture balanced on a fine thread. Movement between these ranks is rare, but not impossible. A wealthy merchant's daughter might marry into the gentry, or an impecunious nobleman might seek fortune through business or the army. But for most, their birth defined their destiny. The world was a carefully arranged garden, beautiful, orderly, and not to be disturbed. For women, especially, this world was a labyrinth of expectations. A woman's virtue and reputation were her most precious possessions, fragile and fiercely protected. From childhood, she learned the art of comportment, how to sit, how to speak, even how to breathe with grace. Her future was often determined not by dreams or desires, but by the marriage market. a delicate dance where dowries and social standing weighed as heavily as affection. A well-matched marriage promised security and respect. A misstep could lead to scandal or solitude. Whispers of impropriety spread quickly, carried by eyes sharp and tongues sharper. A glance considered too bold, a letter written in haste, or an evening visit unchaperoned could unravel years of good standing. But within these constraints, there was also warmth, kindness, and subtle rebellion. Close friendships offered solace. Poetry and music filled drawing rooms with quiet rebellion against the harshness of convention. Writers like Jane Austen observed these boundaries with a sharp eye and gentle humor, capturing the nuances of a society where every smile had meaning, every silence spoke volumes. As you listen, picture the soft rustle of silk skirts sweeping across polished floors, the faint scent of lavender and rose lingering in the air, and the quiet murmur of polite conversation weaving through candlelit rooms. Feel the weight of the social codes, both comforting and confining, a delicate dance of appearances that shaped lives as much as laws or letters. And as the night deepens, allow yourself to rest within this world of gentle boundaries, a place where tradition and grace linger softly, inviting peace and quietude. Regency balls, the gentle dance of elegance, the invitation and arrival. Imagine receiving, on a soft sheet of embossed paper, an invitation to a grand Regency ball. The delicate script curls gracefully across the page, each word carefully chosen, carrying a promise of elegance, music, and refined company. The envelope is sealed with wax, its color rich and warm, broken only by a careful finger in the quiet solitude of a morning room. There is a gentle flutter of excitement and a touch of nervous anticipation. How will the evening unfold? Who will be there? What music will fill the air? The preparation itself is a ritual, slow and deliberate. Picture the soft rustling of silk as a lady slips into a gown of pale muslin, the fabric whispering against skin, cool and smooth. Each fold is arranged with care, the high waistline sitting just beneath the bust, flowing gracefully to the floor. The scent of lavender from a handkerchief is a comforting companion. A gentleman adjusts his cravat, tying it with practiced precision. The crisp collar frames a face touched by soft candlelight, eyes reflecting both eagerness and calm. Gloves are slipped on slowly, a final touch of refinement. Travel to the ball might be by carriage, the wheels turning rhythmically along quiet country roads or cobblestone streets. The night air cools the skin, carrying faint scents of earth and wood smoke. The world outside feels hushed, as if holding its breath for what lies ahead. As the carriage doors open, the soft murmur of voices and the gentle glow of candlelight spill into the night. You step onto polished marble steps and enter a world transformed, a ballroom alive with light, music, and movement. Atmosphere and setting. The ballroom's warm embrace. The grand room opens before you, vast and resplendent. Crystal chandeliers hang from a high ceiling, their many facets scattering light like tiny stars. The flicker of dozens of candles fills the space with a golden glow, warm and welcoming. Rich tapestries and velvet drapes frame tall windows, while garlands of fresh flowers add subtle color and fragrance. The polished floor reflects the shimmering light, inviting dancers to glide and twirl. Soft murmurs ripple through the crowd, whispers of greeting, laughter, and the shuffle of dancing feet. The air carries the faint aroma of sweetmeats and perfumed waters, mingling with the crisp scent of fine linens and polished wood. You feel the gentle warmth of the room against your skin, a comfortable contrast to the cool night beyond. Every detail is designed to create a sanctuary of beauty and calm, a refuge from the demands of the day. Music and opening dances, the gentle invitation. The orchestra begins to tune, the soft rustle of sheet music, the light touch of bows on strings. The first notes of a minuet float into the air, measured, elegant, inviting. Couples move toward the floor with quiet grace, their steps slow and deliberate. Hands meet gently, eyes connect briefly. The dance is a conversation without words, a delicate balance of precision and feeling. Feel the steady rhythm as the dancers glide in time, their movements both choreographed and spontaneous. The soft swish of skirts, the gentle tap of shoes, the rise and fall of music, it all creates a soothing, hypnotic cadence. The minuet ends with a final, graceful bow, applause soft and respectful. The evening unfolds slowly, each dance a new chapter in a story told through music and motion. Regency architecture, the quiet grandeur of space and light. As the soft candlelight from a ball fades gently from your mind, let us now step into the serene world of Regency architecture. Those quiet, elegant spaces that shaped the lives of many and stood as silent witnesses to an era of refinement. Imagine, if you will, the early morning sun, casting a tender glow on the smooth, pale facades of a London townhouse. The building rises with a graceful simplicity, its walls covered in smooth stucco, painted a creamy white or a delicate pastel. The light touches every surface, causing it to shimmer softly, as though the walls themselves are breathing in the calm of the new day. Notice the perfect symmetry of the windows. Tall, slender sash windows set in neat rows, their glass panes catching the light like jewels. Some are framed by delicate shutters, others open wide to welcome the morning air and the distant murmur of the city waking up. Below, wrought iron balconies with intricate scrollwork provide tiny gardens in the sky, where climbing roses might curl their fragrant tendrils, or where a lady might stand quietly, watching the bustle below with a soft smile. Imagine the gentle creak of the balcony floorboards beneath her feet and the faint rustling of leaves stirred by a light breeze. Now, turn your gaze to the great country estates, those majestic homes set deep within sprawling grounds. Picture wide verandas supported by slender columns, their pale stone cool to the touch in the morning shade. These porches invite slow, thoughtful strolls or quiet moments of reflection, where one might sip tea and watch birds flit among the trees. The design of these homes speaks of balance and order. Windows align in harmonious rows, and roofs slope gently, their lines clean and unadorned. Every element has its place, creating a visual rhythm that soothes the eye and calms the mind. Step inside now. Feel the coolness of the polished floor beneath your slippers. The ceilings rise high above, crowned with delicate plasterwork, swirls, leaves, and floral patterns intricately molded, as if nature itself had taken form in plaster. Light filters softly through tall windows, casting dappled shadows that dance slowly across walls painted in soft shades of cream, blush, or pale blue. Imagine the scent of beeswax on polished wood mingling with the faint aroma of fresh flowers in a porcelain vase. The crackle of a fireplace adds warmth to the room, while the soft rustle of silk gowns brushes against rugs laid carefully on the floor. Every detail within these walls is purposeful. The grand staircase curves upward with elegant ease, its wooden banisters smooth and inviting to the touch. Marble mantels hold delicate porcelain figurines, each telling a story of distant lands or cherished memories. Visualize the drawing rooms bathed in afternoon light, where guests gather amid tasteful furniture arranged with a careful eye toward conversation and comfort. Rich tapestries and framed paintings line the walls, landscapes capturing rolling hills, portraits reflecting the calm dignity of their subjects. Beyond the house, the gardens unfold in gentle order, winding paths bordered by neatly clipped hedges, flower beds bursting with roses, lavender, and honeysuckle. The distant murmur of a fountain adds a soothing soundtrack, its waters dancing softly in the light. These gardens are not merely decoration, but extensions of the home, spaces designed for reflection and gentle socializing. Imagine walking slowly along gravel paths, the crunch of tiny stones beneath your feet, the fragrance of blossoms carried on a cool breeze. The architecture of the Regency Era invites calm, harmony, and graceful living. It is a world where space and light combine to create a sanctuary, a place to breathe deeply, to rest, to dream. As you imagine moving through these rooms and gardens, let the balance and beauty of the spaces around you ease your thoughts. Feel the quiet strength of the walls, the softness of light falling through the windows, the gentle promise of a peaceful night ahead. Breathe in the stillness and allow yourself to sink deeper into comfort and calm. Sleep now, surrounded by the quiet grandeur and gentle elegance of Regency architecture. Power beneath the surface. While society whispered over tea, the world beyond was restless. Britain was embroiled in war with Napoleon, a distant storm that sent sons off in uniform and returned them changed. Across Europe, empires rose and fell. The French Revolution had shaken monarchies to their core, and though Britain had avoided the same upheaval, its ruling class watched with wary eyes. The Peninsular War, and later the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, became defining moments. Soldiers left home with youthful pride and returned bearing the weight of battle, their lives reshaped by the enormity of war. At home, the Prince Regent, who later became George IV, ruled with opulence and flourish. Known for his lavish tastes and architectural ambitions, he commissioned the magnificent Royal Pavilion in Brighton, a whimsical blend of Eastern and Gothic design. His patronage of the arts gave rise to a burst of cultural expression, but his extravagance also drew quiet discontent. Beneath the elegant veneer of banquets and court life, murmurs of reform began to stir. The working poor faced harsh conditions, and the price of bread, a daily concern, rose with economic strain. The Peterloo Massacre in 1819, a peaceful protest turned tragic, revealed the growing tension between the governing elite and the people who labored beneath them. Meanwhile, the air itself began to change. Smoke from coal fires thickened city skies. The rhythmic churning of machines echoed in new factories rising across the landscape. The Industrial Revolution had begun to hum quietly behind the curtain of Regency refinement, its tempo increasing with every year. Inventions like the steam engine and mechanized looms redefined labor and industry. Families who once spun thread at home were drawn to crowded urban mills. Children worked long hours. Streets grew louder. Chimneys multiplied like forest branches, pumping smoke into dawn. The contrast between the country manor and the city tenement grew sharper. Cities like Manchester and Birmingham expanded rapidly, not with elegance, but with noise, soot, and urgency. And still, letters arrived each day by carriage. country balls were planned with care. The old and new lived side by side, uneasily but undeniably entwined. Within Parliament, debates simmered. Questions of representation, religious freedom, and social responsibility crept into chambers once reserved for landowning elites. Catholic emancipation stirred debate, as did the idea of expanding the vote beyond a privileged few. Though reform would not come quickly, the seeds were sown beneath velvet and lace. Newspapers and pamphlets, once read by only the elite, spread ideas to a wider public. Literacy, though not yet widespread, was growing. Coffee houses buzzed with discussion. Writers used fiction to explore justice, identity, and transformation. Austen observed quietly. Shelley imagined boldly. Public sentiment, once content with deference, began to stir with opinion. The genteel salons of the upper classes began to brush against radical ideas brought in by tutors, traveling relatives, and printed leaflets passed hand to hand. Clergymen and professors, once guardians of tradition, found themselves interpreting sermons and texts in ways that nodded toward change. Still, it was a transformation not of revolution, but of patience, of pages turned, of hands inked with thought, of minds opening like morning light. And so, this era, poised so gracefully in history, stood on the cusp of transformation. Underneath the elegance, the world was shifting, not with violence, but with the steady march of progress. New voices, once silent, were beginning to rise. As you lie back and listen, imagine the blend of old and new, the stillness of the library beside the thunder of a distant locomotive, the candle's gentle flicker beside a printing press, the echo of footsteps through marble halls slowly yielding to the sound of change. Let these images settle like soft snow upon your mind, and rest, knowing that even in the most elegant eras, transformation begins in whispers. Clothing the Regency world, fashion in the Regency era was not simply about what one wore. It was a daily expression of identity, class, and taste. Each outfit, each accessory was a whisper of elegance or ambition, of refinement or conformity. And within these fabrics and silhouettes lived an entire language, unspoken but unmistakable. In grand townhouses, the day might begin with a maid gently laying out her mistress's morning dress. A gown of fine muslin, delicately embroidered, soft to the touch, as light as air. The simplicity of the empire waist, rising just beneath the bust and flowing to the floor, allowed the natural form to move with graceful ease. The choice of color, pale lavender, whisper soft blue, or pristine white, spoke to a woman's age, her marital status, and her sensibilities. Young women, in particular, favored light hues, ethereal shades that caught the candlelight and danced gently as they moved through a room. These colors suggested purity and youth, qualities held in the highest regard. Older women, or those in mourning, chose deeper tones, charcoal grays, dark plums, or solemn black. Every detail mattered. The way a hem was stitched, the cut of a sleeve, the gentle curve of a neckline. The fabric itself spoke of wealth or frugality. Sheer Indian muslins for the wealthy, simpler homespun linens for those of modest means. Layering was both art and necessity. Beneath each gown lay corsets and chemises, petticoats and ribbons, carefully tied and adjusted. Corsets were not as rigid as in earlier or later eras, designed more to support than to constrict. Stays gave posture and poise, lifting the bust and elongating the form. The underpinnings served both structure and modesty. Shoes were light, often flat-soled slippers of satin or kid leather, dyed to match a gown or bound with tiny silk rosettes. Stockings, usually white, were held up by garters tied with ribbon. Jewelry was kept minimal in the morning, perhaps a string of pearls, a hair comb of ivory, or a miniature portrait pinned to the bodice. As the day wore on, one's dress changed with the hour. Morning dresses gave way to walking dresses, sturdier garments with higher necklines and sleeves designed to shield against sun and dust. These were often accompanied by a pelisse, a long, coat-like garment lined for warmth, trimmed with fur or velvet. Bonnets grew larger, shading the face, adorned with feathers, silk flowers and veils. Gloves were never optional. They were a second skin, a symbol of refinement and protection from both sun and scrutiny. For men, dressing was no less important. The Regency gentlemen adhered to an exacting routine. Breeches had given way to trousers, snug through the thigh and often fastened with buttons at the ankle. Waistcoats were colourful and elaborately embroidered, hidden beneath the dark elegance of the tailcoat. Cravats, those carefully folded neckcloths, were an art unto themselves. There were entire manuals written on the correct methods of tying them. Some knots required starch, others required pins. A man might spend an hour before the mirror, perfecting the fold. Hair for gentlemen was kept shorter now, a departure from the powdered wigs of previous generations. Natural curls were favoured, often brushed forward in the Brutus style. Clean shaves were fashionable, and personal grooming was elevated to ritual. Ladies, too, treated their toilette as ceremony. Hair was styled high with curls and coils, often adorned with feathers, combs, or strings of pearls. Pomades and powders scented with lavender or orange blossom helped tame the flyaways. Rouge was applied sparingly, lips stained with the faintest tint of rose. Too much colour was considered vulgar. Subtlety was the hallmark of beauty. Scent played a quiet role in fashion. Floral waters and oils were used to freshen garments and skin. Lavender, rose, bergamot, and jasmine were among the most beloved. A sachet tucked into a bodice, a drop of oil behind the ear. These were delicate gestures, meant not to overwhelm, but to be discovered only by those standing very near. Accessories were the finishing notes of an ensemble. Fans made of painted silk or mother of pearl rested on wrists or were used to send secret signals across crowded rooms. Reticules, small handbags, carried handkerchiefs, calling cards, and the occasional billet doux. Parasols shielded complexions from the sun's bite and were chosen to match one's gown. Each item had a place, and each choice held meaning. And then came evening, when true splendour unfolded. Drawing room gowns shimmered in candlelight, their silks and satins moving like water across parquet floors. Necklines dipped lower, sleeves shortened. Hair sparkled with ornaments. Jewellery emerged in greater display. Diamond earrings, sapphire brooches, strings of gold. Balls were the climax of fashion. Invitations required a response, and one's gown might be prepared weeks in advance. White was the colour of debutantes. Trains swept the floor. Gloves reached the elbow. The scent of rosewater lingered as partners bowed, curtsied, and took their places for the next quadrille. In country homes, fashion found comfort in utility. Riding habits were tailored sharply, with military precision. Boots were polished, hats pinned securely. Even at leisure, one was expected to dress with dignity. Tailors and dressmakers played essential roles in this world of cloth and lace. Their names whispered through town like secrets. Madame Eloise for the finest silks, Mr. Green for the crisply cut tailcoat. For the wealthiest clients, entire wardrobes were commissioned. For others, garments were adapted, retrimmed, or passed down. In this way, fashion was not simply about appearance. It was a map, a visible history of social aspiration, personal taste, economic circumstance, and emotional longing. It reflected the soul of an age that balanced delicacy with discipline, elegance with expression. So as you lie in quiet comfort, imagine the rustle of silk across polished floors, the soft hiss of satin gloves, the muted clink of a buttoned boot. Imagine the care taken with each layer, the hands that stitched, the hours spent in preparation. Let yourself drift among swaying skirts and starched cravats. Feel the soft pull of ribbon against skin, the flicker of candlelight across a mirrored dressing table, the gentle sigh of perfume released from lace. In this world of dressing, every moment was touched by intention. Every garment told a story. And now, let those stories wrap you like a shawl, soft, warm, and endless, until sleep takes you deeper still. Courtship and marriage, a dance of patience and politeness. Courtship in the Regency era unfolded slowly, like the blooming of a delicate flower, tender and deliberate. It was not driven by passion alone, but by decorum, duty, and the quiet choreography of propriety. Love may have been the goal, but appearances, alliances, and family honor guided every step. Imagine a garden party in spring, parasols bobbing gently, laughter lilting across clipped hedges, the scent of blossoms in the air. It is here, in such serene moments, that courtship often began. A glance exchanged across a gravel path, a shared comment on the weather, a dance, carefully requested, graciously accepted. There were rules, spoken and unspoken. A gentleman never approached a lady without proper introduction. A walk in the garden was only permissible under the gaze of a chaperone. Letters could not be exchanged unless the courtship was well along, and even then, they were often filtered through family hands. The language of love was restrained, clothed in metaphor and euphemism. To declare affection too early would have been unseemly, even scandalous. A suitor's intentions had to be clear, his background impeccable. Fortune was discussed with as much scrutiny as character. Was he of good family? Was his income reliable? Did he possess land, or at least the promise of it? For the lady, the questions were different, but no less exacting. Was she accomplished? Could she play the pianoforte, embroider a sampler, carry herself with elegance in a drawing room? Beauty was admired, but breeding was essential. In drawing rooms adorned with floral wallpaper, and in parlors scented faintly of beeswax and lavender, families often discussed prospects in hushed tones, sipping tea while casting sidelong glances toward the object of a daughter's affection. A gentleman's visit might be recorded in the household diary. A brief note about his manners, his attire, the nature of his conversation. Every detail was weighed carefully. Courtship was not idle flirtation. It was measured, deliberate, like embroidery. Each stitch precise, every pause meaningful. Even an invitation to dance at a ball was laden with implications. To ask a young woman for more than 2 dances might signal deeper intentions. To fail to ask her altogether could cast doubt upon her social desirability. Balls, then, became not only a stage for fashion, but for subtle negotiations. Candlelight flickered against mirrored walls as orchestras played waltzes and cotillions. The air was filled with the rustle of silk and the faint scent of perfume. And beneath it all, the hum of possibility. As weeks turned to months, affection might deepen. the longing for privacy, the hunger to speak freely, to walk unchaperoned, to touch, even the briefest of touches, became a yearning quietly endured. Secret glances became longer. Conversations at garden gates stretched just past propriety, and sometimes, in the glow of twilight, a letter found its way to trembling hands, tucked into a glove, or slipped between pages of a borrowed book. Love letters in the Regency period were delicate works of prose, filled with metaphors, elegant phrasing, and the restraint expected of their time. They were tokens of sentiment wrapped in modesty. A man might compare his beloved's eyes to starlight or confess that he thought of her even in dreams. A woman, if she dared reply, might speak of the kindness he had shown, the honor he possessed, or the joy his visits brought to her days. And then came the proposal, not beneath fireworks or public fanfare, but in a quiet parlor perhaps, or on a misty morning walk. With a voice hushed and sincere, a gentleman would ask for a lady's hand and her family's blessing. The acceptance of such a proposal was more than an agreement to marry. It was an entrance into a new life, a shift in identity, a sacred bond. Once engaged, preparations began. The bride's trousseau might take weeks or months to assemble. Gowns were sewn by hand, linens embroidered with initials. Ribbons, fans, gloves, and delicate nightgowns were carefully folded into cedar-lined chests. The bride's mother oversaw the work with proud precision, while the bride herself drifted between joy and quiet reflection. The wedding, when it came, was often simple yet poignant. In a stone church surrounded by gardens or a city chapel echoing with early sunlight, vows were whispered. The bride wore white, or perhaps pale blue, a color of fidelity. Her gown, though modest, was made with care. A small bouquet might be gathered from the family garden. Lavender, roses, myrtle. Guests signed the register, offered blessings, and shared a quiet meal. And then, the journey began. A new household to manage, a new name to write, new rhythms to learn. The marriage bed, once a mystery, now part of daily life. For many couples, love grew in the steady accumulation of ordinary days, shared meals, family letters, walks in the orchard, whispered dreams by firelight. But not every story was so charmed. Some unions were arranged out of duty, not desire. A lady might marry a man she barely knew, drawn by his title or fortune. A gentleman might feel bound to secure a dowry or join families in alliance. And yet, even in such marriages, affection could slowly blossom, shaped by kindness, shared purpose and time. There were heartbreaks too. Love lost to war, illness, or the cruelties of gossip. A broken engagement could linger like a bruise. A widow's mourning dress, worn for months or years, told of sorrow that reshaped the heart. Still, in poetry, in novels, and in quiet lives lived behind ivy-covered walls, love persisted. It waited beneath the surface of formal smiles. It endured through silence and propriety. It grew in gardens, in letters, in the space between dance steps. Let your mind drift now to a warm drawing room, the sound of gentle rain against the windows. A lady sits at her writing desk, quill in hand, composing a note she may never send. Her fingers pause, her breath soft, the ink still glistening. Or picture a gentleman walking through a grove of elms, each footstep stirring fallen leaves. He pauses to press a dried flower between the pages of a book. These quiet acts, small and unnoticed, were the true rhythm of love in the Regency world. Sleep now in the knowledge that even in a time of restraint, the heart still found ways to speak and to listen. The path to love was narrow, but it was walked with grace. And as the candle burns low, may your dreams carry you gently through gardens of conversation and into the tender hush of promises made. Etiquette and social expectations, the gentle architecture of grace. In Regency England, etiquette was the architecture of everyday life, unseen by many, but essential to the structure of the world. It formed the scaffolding of society, the framework that shaped interaction, relationships, and even thought. At every hour, in every gesture, politeness guided behavior like a soft and steady hand. From the moment one woke in a grand townhouse or a countryside estate, one's day unfolded not merely in tasks, but in rituals. Rituals of respect, civility, and silent codes passed from parent to child, from governess to pupil, from one generation to the next. Even breakfast had its rules. When to speak, what to speak of, and to whom. A young lady, for example, would not address a man of higher rank until he first initiated conversation. A gentleman, likewise, would not sit unless invited. Posture mattered. Eye contact was a delicate dance. Smiles were subtle, never wide. Loud laughter was reserved for children or those unaware of their place in the social fabric. Each room in a house had its tone, its level of formality. In the drawing room, conversation was expected to be light and graceful. No politics, no scandal. Only remarks on the weather, art, poetry, or music. The library allowed for more seriousness, but still, emotion was gently sheathed. In dining rooms, one waited for the hostess to begin eating before lifting one's fork. Napkins were placed in the lap and remained there. Hands were never seen below the table. Letters followed their own etiquette. The manner in which one folded a note, addressed the envelope, and referred to one's correspondent could signal warmth, indifference, or insult. A letter sent too hastily or without due salutation might be viewed as coarse. Pens moved slowly, words chosen with care. To write with elegance was not simply to inform, but to express character. And yet, the rules of etiquette were not merely restrictive. For many, they offered structure, a sense of place and reassurance. In knowing what was expected, one knew how to move through the world with confidence and grace. There was beauty in this choreography, a language of bows and curtsies, invitations and replies, handshakes and gloved hands held just so. Dances, for instance, were exercises in etiquette. Each step had meaning. Partners did not touch without permission. Conversation during the dance was carefully monitored. If a gentleman's hand lingered too long on a lady's waist, it was noted. If a lady turned her head too closely toward her partner, it might cause whispers. The steps themselves were memorized from youth. Quadrilles, reels, and the fashionable waltz, which some still considered scandalously intimate. The etiquette of greetings could fill volumes. A bow of the head, the depth of a curtsy, the precise angle of a hat, all conveyed social standing and relationship. One greeted an elder differently than a peer. A duchess was not addressed like a baronet's daughter. Mistakes in greeting could close doors forever. Tea was its own ceremony. Poured by the lady of the house, tea was offered to guests not simply as refreshment, but as a mark of welcome. The way one stirred, sipped, or held a saucer spoke volumes. To clatter one's spoon or overfill one's cup was to breach decorum. Children learned these rules with miniature sets and practiced in the nursery. In letters of introduction and visits of condolence, in the choice of calling cards and the time of their delivery, etiquette governed all. Calling hours were sacred. A visit before noon was intrusive. Staying longer than 15 minutes could be a sign of poor breeding. Cards were left at the door if the person was out, signaling one's regard and intention. Even mourning had its rules. A widow might wear black for a full year, followed by half-mourning colours, greys, purples, and muted blues. Social engagements were forgone, laughter softened, letters signed with restrained phrases. To observe mourning poorly was to seem heartless, to mourn too long, melodramatic. Among the servant class, etiquette filtered downward. A butler knew which guests received which wines. A housemaid stepped aside when a family member passed. Kitchen staff bowed to hierarchy as rigid as any noble lineage. Even in labour, grace was expected. Meals were served in silence, beds turned down with care, shoes placed with their heels aligned, coats brushed free of lint. Every detail whispered respect. Church, too, was a theatre of manners. One's arrival, posture, and attention reflected one's values. Families sat in their designated pews. One did not whisper or fidget. The Bible was carried in gloved hands. Children were taught from an early age to bow their heads not only in prayer, but in reverence to the traditions that cradled their lives. In education, etiquette was paramount. Young ladies were taught to dance, to sing, to speak French, to draw, and to arrange flowers, not simply for accomplishment, but for the cultivation of grace. Young men were expected to write with refinement, to discuss literature, and to control their tempers. Stoicism was admired, gentleness praised. Even nature walks had expectations. One wore the appropriate attire, gloves, bonnet, walking stick. One did not rush or call loudly. Gentle strolls, thoughtful observations, and conversations on flowers, birds, or the shape of the clouds were more appropriate than heated debates or laughter. All of this, the curtsies, the posture, the letters, the dress, the tones of voice, was the music of Regency society, and those who moved in time with it were considered refined. But etiquette was more than just performance. At its heart, it was a form of kindness, a way to consider others, to offer space, to hold back one's ego in service of peace. It asked for patience, awareness, and humility. Even when it felt rigid, it reminded all that they were part of something greater, a shared understanding of how to live together. Now, as you let yourself sink deeper into quiet, imagine the hush of a grand room lit by chandeliers, the soft click of a door closing gently, the rustle of skirts and slippers across polished floors. Each sound tells a story of restraint, respect, and an enduring wish to move through the world with care. Let your thoughts glide now through this world of delicate gestures, where every nod, every pause, every word was chosen with intention. And as you drift further, know that in this world of quiet civility, grace was not an act. It was a way of being. Regency transportation, gentle journeys through time. Imagine once again, in the soft glow of early morning, stepping out into the world of the Regency. The air is cool and fresh, filled with the scent of damp earth and morning dew clinging to leaves. Your journey begins here, not rushed, but unfolding with grace and ease. The road ahead stretches gently beneath a canopy of trees, their branches whispering softly in the breeze. The ground is a mix of cobblestone and packed dirt, worn smooth by the passage of countless wheels and hooves over many years. The horse-drawn carriage, a moving sanctuary. Envision a horse-drawn carriage waiting patiently by a manor's gate. Its polished wooden panels gleam softly in the sunlight, painted in deep greens or muted blues, trimmed with fine gold leaf that glints delicately. The leather harnesses on the horses shine with care, their brass buckles catching the light as the animals shift their weight. Step inside. The cabin is quiet and plush, lined with rich velvet cushions that soften every bump and turn of the road. Heavy curtains frame small windows, pulled slightly aside to let in the fresh air and views of the countryside. Feel the gentle rocking as the horses begin their steady pace, hoofbeats falling into a soothing rhythm that lulls your mind and body into calm. The carriage wheels hum softly on cobblestones, a repetitive and comforting sound that fills the air. Outside, the world drifts slowly past, fields of golden wheat waving gently, grazing sheep beneath distant hills, and shaded lanes bordered with wildflowers. Different carriage types, from phaetons to stagecoaches. The Regency era was rich with a variety of carriages, each suited to different journeys and social occasions. There is the light and elegant phaeton, a sporty carriage with large wheels and a high seat, designed for swift travel and admired for its graceful silhouette. Picture the driver holding reins loosely, guiding spirited horses through a sun-dappled park. Contrast this with the sturdy stagecoach, a larger vehicle built for longer journeys across the country. These coaches carry several passengers, bouncing gently as they traverse uneven roads. Inside, travelers exchange quiet greetings and stories, sharing the soft warmth of blankets and the occasional sweet from a small leather pouch. Imagine the grandeur of the barouche, an open carriage with sweeping curves and plush seats, perfect for summer promenades, where one might enjoy the breeze and catch glimpses of familiar faces along a garden path or town square. The rhythm of travel, roads and routes. Travel was an event measured not by speed but by time and rhythm. The roads themselves were varied, a mixture of well-maintained toll roads called turnpikes, where smooth gravel and carefully laid stone made travel easier, and narrower country lanes where tree roots and mud might slow progress. Picture the famous Great North Road, stretching from London to Edinburgh, carrying merchants, nobles, and travellers alike. Inns dotted the route, each offering a place to rest, change horses, and share a warm meal beside a crackling fire. The journey was as much about these stops as the road itself. Imagine stepping into a cozy coaching inn, the scent of roasting meat and fresh bread filling the air. Travellers exchange news, laughter mixing with the crackle of logs, before setting out once again under a sky streaked with dusk. Travel customs, etiquette on the move. Travelling in the Regency was also a dance of manners and expectations. Imagine dressing carefully before departure. Gentlemen adjusting their cravats and gloves, ladies smoothing their bonnets and shawls. Politeness and propriety extended to the road, with travellers greeting one another with nods or brief, soft-spoken exchanges. Carriage drivers were skilled artisans, guiding horses with a steady hand and an understanding of the road's challenges. The relationship between driver and horse was one of trust and quiet communication, reflected in the gentle encouragement of a soft word or flick of the reins. Inside the carriage, conversations were hushed, and silence often welcomed, a moment to reflect or simply enjoy the passing landscape. Sedan chairs and walking, gentle urban journeys. In busy cities like London, not every journey was by carriage. Imagine being lifted carefully into a sedan chair, a small enclosed seat, carried by two sturdy bearers. The motion is rhythmic and gentle, the soft cloth cushions cradling the passenger as they move gracefully through bustling streets. Outside, the clatter of horses' hooves mixes with the chatter of market vendors and the distant tolling of church bells. The bearer's steady steps provide a soothing, almost hypnotic beat, a calm within the city's lively pulse. For shorter distances, walking was common and encouraged. Picture a lady strolling slowly along a garden path or a wide promenade, her skirts whispering softly against the gravel as she pauses to admire a blooming flower or exchange a gentle smile with a passing acquaintance. Waterways, the calm flow of river and sea. Not all travel was by road. Envision a leisurely boat ride on the Thames or along a country river. The wooden hull rocks gently with the movement of the water, while sails flap softly in a mild breeze. Feel the cool splash of water against the sides of the boat and the warm sun on your face. The air is filled with the scent of fresh water, wildflowers on the banks, and distant wood smoke. River travel offers a slower, more contemplative pace, a chance to watch the world float by in scenes of peaceful rural life or elegant city vistas. Famous routes and their stories. Consider the journeys along the coastal road from Brighton to London, a popular route for those seeking seaside air and social gatherings. Imagine the lively scenes at the spa town of Bath, where visitors arrived from across England to bathe in healing waters and enjoy society's finest entertainments. Each road, river, or path holds stories of lovers meeting in secret, of merchants transporting goods, of families returning home under starry skies. Reflections for rest. As your mind travels gently with these carriages, roads, and waterways, feel the steady rhythm of movement slow your breath and quiet your thoughts. Let the gentle sway of the phaeton, the quiet footsteps of sedan bearers, and the soft lapping of water guide you toward rest. The world of the Regency moves gracefully, patiently, a reminder to slow down, to savor each moment. Sleep now, carried gently along these tranquil journeys through time. Literature, music, and culture, the soul of the Regency. Imagine, if you will, a softly lit room in a grand Georgian townhouse. The late afternoon sun pours through tall sash windows, draping the room in warm, honeyed light. The air carries the faint scent of old paper mingled with a hint of lavender from a small bouquet on the windowsill. Here, time seems to slow. The bustle of the outside world softened into a distant murmur. In one corner, a young woman sits in a high-backed chair, a leather-bound book resting gently on her lap. Her fingers brush lightly over the worn edges of the pages, and her eyes trace the elegant script written by hands long since stilled. The words unfold slowly, each sentence a delicate thread weaving through her thoughts, inviting her into another world. This is the quiet magic of Regency literature. It was an era when the written word held a special power, both a refuge and a mirror of society. Books were cherished treasures, read aloud in parlours, exchanged between friends, and kept close through lonely evenings. The novels of Jane Austen, whose keen observations and sharp wit captured the very essence of social life, were beginning to enchant readers. Each character, each conversation, was a gentle exploration of manners, morality, and the subtle dance of human relations. As she reads, the woman is transported beyond the four walls, into the leafy gardens of a country estate, where Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy exchange glances rich with unspoken meaning. She hears the soft laughter of a ballroom filled with swirling gowns and the measured steps of a minuet. The words flow over her like a calm stream, soothing and steady. But Austen was only one voice among many, Around the same time, Sir Walter Scott's sweeping tales brought history alive, stirring imaginations with stories of ancient castles and heroic deeds. His words painted vast landscapes and brave hearts, transporting readers to times of chivalry and legend. Meanwhile, the brooding verses of Lord Byron stirred passions and controversy. His poems, charged with emotion and defiance, echoed in the halls of salons and whispered in the shadows of candlelit rooms. The Romantics, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Shelley, Keats, each offered their own reflections on nature, beauty, and the fleeting nature of life. Their words were read aloud, their rhythms a gentle lullaby for those seeking solace or inspiration. Literary salons flourished in London, spaces where poets, painters, and philosophers gathered beneath glittering chandeliers to exchange ideas. The hum of conversation, the clink of teacups, and the soft rustle of silk filled the air. Here, literature was not simply read, but lived, a dance of minds as intricate as any waltz. Music, too, was woven into this cultural tapestry. The delicate notes of a pianoforte, the tender strings of a harp, the clear voice of a young singer, all brought moments of joy and reflection. Evening gatherings often began with music, setting a mood of calm intimacy. The works of Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven echoed through the chambers, their melodies gentle as a breeze through autumn leaves. Imagine a young girl sitting at the piano, her small fingers pressing keys with trembling care under the watchful eye of her governess. Each note is practiced, each phrase perfected, for music was not merely entertainment, but a language of refinement and expression. A flawless performance was a sign of grace, a social currency exchanged in glances and smiles. Outside the private salons, the streets of London and country towns buzzed with their own melodies, fiddlers playing on street corners, vendors singing calls, children humming as they played. Music was everywhere, from the humble cottage to the grand theatre. Visual art was equally cherished. Portraits captured the essence of loved ones. Landscapes spoke to the soul's yearning for beauty, and sketches documented fleeting moments. Artisans and amateurs alike sought to preserve memory and emotion through brush and charcoal. Walls of Regency homes became galleries of personal and cultural identity, displaying treasures from distant lands, silks from India, fans from China, and pottery from the Middle East, all reflecting the vast reach of the British Empire and the curiosity of the age. The theatre was a vibrant scene. Covent Garden and Drury Lane hosted grand productions where audiences dressed in their finest, filling the rooms with polite applause and whispered commentary. The stage brought stories to life. Comedies, tragedies, romances, all reflecting and shaping public taste and thought. Conversation itself was a performance, a dance of wit and grace. In drawing rooms, guests parried with clever remarks, quoted poetry, and engaged in thoughtful debate. A well-chosen phrase, a literary allusion, a delicate joke could elevate the spirit and solidify social bonds. Dance, the physical manifestation of culture, was both an art and a social necessity. Each step, each bow, each glance was imbued with meaning. To dance well was to participate in the language of society, a graceful communication beyond words. As you listen, imagine yourself drifting through these scenes, the gentle sound of pages turning, a soft melody playing in the background, the murmur of conversation fading into the calm of night. Let the rich textures of Regency culture lull you deeper into relaxation, carrying you softly into dreams filled with poetry, music, and beauty. Reflections on how the era ended. The quiet closing of a chapter, As the final years of the Regency drew near, the soft light of an era began to dim gently, like the last warm rays of sunset touching a quiet countryside. The world around was shifting, whispered changes in politics, society and technology slowly unfolding, yet all beneath the calm surface of everyday life. The figure of the Prince Regent himself, a man both admired and criticized, grew older and more reserved. His extravagant tastes and love of art had defined the period, but the weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders as the country faced new challenges. The Napoleonic Wars, which had cast a long shadow, finally drew to a close in 1815 with the Battle of Waterloo, a moment both triumphant and somber, marking an end to years of conflict that had touched every family in the kingdom. Peace brought relief, but also uncertainty. Soldiers returned to towns and villages changed by absence and loss. The economy slowly shifted, new industries growing quietly while old ways held on like ancient trees rooted in familiar soil. The steam engine began its gentle rumble, promising transformation but yet still distant, like a future dream. The fashions of the era softened too, evolving from the high-waisted gowns and elaborate cravats to simpler lines. This change was subtle, like the shifting breeze that carries the scent of rain. The world was moving toward the Victorian age, with its own codes, its own rhythms, and its own quiet revolutions. In drawing rooms, conversation turned from poetry and politics to the promise of progress and innovation. Yet the manners and music of the Regency lingered like the echo of a beloved song. Families cherished memories of elegant balls, quiet garden strolls, and the gentle dance of courtship that had defined their youth. Even as the world changed, the heart of the era, its grace, its restraint, its deep appreciation for beauty and order, remained in the stories told by grandmothers and the novels read by candlelight. The pages of books turned slowly, as if savoring the final lines. Imagine now the twilight settling over a quiet country estate, the last light fading behind ancient oaks. A gentle breeze stirs the curtains, and the soft notes of a pianoforte drift through the evening air. Somewhere nearby, a fire crackles softly, casting warm shadows on polished wood and embroidered cushions. This closing of one chapter felt less like an ending and more like a peaceful transition, a moment to rest before the next dawn. The Regency, with all its elegance and complexity, slipped gently into history, leaving behind whispers of silk and soft melodies. As you rest now, allow yourself to drift with the era's last sighs, carried on the hush of a fading day. Feel the calm of centuries past surround you, wrapping you in a blanket woven from time, tradition, and tender remembrance. Sleep deeply, knowing that the stories, the music, and the quiet grace of the Regency will always linger, in dreams, in memory, in the soft breath between dusk and dawn. And now, the candles have burned low, the pianoforte has grown still, and the carriages no longer wait by the gates. You've wandered through ballrooms and gardens, heard the rustle of silks, and the quiet sighs of courtship. Thank you for dreaming with us, here at From Dusk Till Yawn. If you found comfort in this story, we gently invite you to subscribe and return again whenever sleep feels far away. Until then, sleep well and good night.